Breaking news, na play. Even the INEC chairman don dey confirm and say the thing no be play again. So right now, I go dey give una this video wey go dey show una one by one wetin dey happen for inside court now and how they take talk and say our Emi local papa so be wan go dey pass underground, but according to una know Nigeria work for corner, they say nothing like that don dey play, but una still remember say some days ago in talk and say if dem comot am na be say kasala go burst for Naija. However the case may be, wetin go burst pass petrol wey be say don dey go 700, make dem just put am for 800 or make dem put am for 1000 naira, because the way wetin still dey go for Nigeria now una no fit understand. I dey wonder how single person, like people wey be say they no get helpers for Nigeria, how they take dey live. But Mona, look this video.
But the critical challenges faced during the conduct of the exercise are yet to be resolved. While the outcome of the polls is being contested in various courts, the electoral body INEC appears to be putting its house in order. At this two-day meeting in Abuja to review the conduct of the elections, logistics arrangement is the major focus. The meeting here is between the leadership of INEC, its frontline officials, electoral officers, and the leaders of the National Union of Road Transport Workers, the National Association of Road Transport Owners, and the Maritime Workers Union of Nigeria. The objective is to identify areas of strength and weaknesses for immediate improvement in the forthcoming elections.
Now, logistics or transportation has been a perennial challenge over time, but is now compounded by the issue of infrastructure and insecurity. There is no logistic activity that this nation undertakes in peacetime or even in wartime like elections, where personnel and materials are deployed to almost 180,000 locations by land, by air, and by sea.
At least 10 critical points are highlighted as areas of key focus in improving elections. They include the general state of preparedness for the elections, voter registration process, recruitment and deployment of ad hoc staff, receipt and deployment of election materials, technology during elections, and election security, just to mention a few.
There is no doubt that the success of any election primarily depends on the ability to deploy personnel and materials to various locations. In Nigeria, this involves the biggest logistics deployment the nation periodically undertakes across vast terrains and often difficult topography.
INEC sees this review as a positive step towards ensuring that the next elections in Nigeria are well-run and transparent. It plans to hold more engagement with internal and external stakeholders. But with 3 off-cycle elections scheduled for November this year, Nigerians are eagerly awaiting to see the electoral body put to good use the lessons it claims to have learned from this exercise. Chinaza Samuel, Arise News.
Joining us now from Abuja is Dr. Sam Amadi, a fellow of the Society of Project Management and Development Professionals International and a public affairs analyst. Good morning, Dr. Amadi. Good to have you on the show this morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Good to be here.
Great Malabite, good morning. 2 things. 1, how do we ensure...
Good morning, Dr. Abati, thank you.
Good morning. 1, how do we ensure electoral justice if the Judex is put under so much pressure by the public? And the related question, which I said the second one, is, earlier on this program, I was complaining that the court, the judiciary, shouldn't be seen to be descending into the arena, responding to every little thing that shows up on social media. Dr. Festus Akonde, Director of Press, was responding to something on social media about the CGN having a phone conversation with Tinubu shortly after this morning. There was also another story that Justice Ugo of the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal had resigned because he's been put under pressure. Now, should the court be responding to every little thing on social media? The basic work of a judge is to deliver justice without minding whose ox is God. But I would like to know your perspective.
Well, thank you very much. I think clearly judges are dignified persons, and that means they do not necessarily have to descend to the level of brickbat or the insane they say, as we say in Nigeria. But again, like Professor Robert Dell said many years ago in his article, the Supreme Court as a political institution, he argues that the Supreme Court particularly and the courts are not just legal institutions, they are now political institutions to the extent that they are required to determine political questions in society. So they have to measure the barometer of society. All this fake news and all this heckling suggest that there is certain perception in the public domain. And so I agree with you, they're not going to dissent, but when they consider that is some of these reports or statements on social media suggest maybe likelihood of loss of trust in the judiciary, they should act. For example, under Trump, when Chief Justice Roberts of the U.S. Supreme Court, Trump made a statement attacking the justices very frontally. The Chief Justice issued a statement, very decent, dignified, but clear, that the Supreme Court justices are not beholden to anybody. And they are restating their judicial commitment. That's expected if the assault becomes something that could threaten. Again, if you look at the Afrobarometer measure of 2023, about 70% of Nigerians said that they have little trust in the judiciary or none at all, compared with INEC 75%. That was before the election. So you can understand the context in which all these are going on. But the key point here is that the judiciary has a responsibility in every era to give first moral signaling to all combatants and partisans that there is an anchor, that's a solid foundation for democracy, which is the rule of law. And the electoral justice is basically the idea that it is a court's responsibility to uphold the three key elements of electoral democracy. First, political freedom, right to organize yourself, right to form parties, right to express your views, which is amply covered in our fundamental rights. The second one, the right of every person, adult, to vote, and the duty on institutions to provide in that facility, which the Electoral Act and the Constitution provides. And we saw that with the massive registration. The third, and very important, that each person votes in environment that is free and fair, and that the votes are counted equally. And that's why, if you look at the electoral reform we've conducted, it has tried to deal with the three elements. First, the right to be registered, make it easier, people can register. As director of Abuja School, we had to work with INEC, put pressure to extend the process so that everybody can register. The second aspect of it, the party, so there are 4 decision makers in the electoral process. 1, the voters, they have to be registered to vote. 2, the parties. Now, the political parties have to conduct primaries that are democratic. The new Electoral Act makes it very clear. And INEC had a responsibility to ensure that those processes do not disenfranchise any party member. That's why they demanded in Section 84 for democratic primaries. Of course, we saw in Akwa Ibom and several places that INEC didn't quite do that thoroughly. The third decision maker after the voter, the party, is the electoral management body, the INEC. Now, that responsibility the Act provided was to ensure accuracy, free voting, and accuracy of results. And that's why we're talking now about electronic transmission. So the law followed the theory. And the final decision maker is the court. The court now sits to uphold and to ensure that either in this value chain, where there's an error, there's a correction. Now, people debate. There's so much judicialization of our elections. If these agencies do their work, the court will have less to do. And that's why my professor at Harvard, Abraham Chase, says that the court, what we call the governance theory, that the court does not come out if the other branches follow the Constitution. But where they fail, the court has the right to govern, to step in and says, you guys got it wrong. So what we expect now, at this stage now, is that the court should be allowed to do their work. The rumor about the judge leaving or resigning is actually could be a tactic to frighten the court and create a statement. Imagine if a judge resigns and you have to go de novo, go back to trial, and the Constitution has a window of 90 days for everything. And so you get to a point where the right to electoral justice will be truncated through managerial manipulation. And so what we need at this point is for the Nigerian people to give the court, the justices of Presidential Tribunal and the Supreme Court ultimately, the full backing, and to make it clear that the court exists at every epoch to save society. Think about the Dred Scott cases. Think about during the time of racism, segregation. Each time, what stopped massive violence is the courage of the judiciary to first moral signal to everybody that there are fundamentals in our laws, fundamentals about who is qualified to run an election. The courts are not going to be there to paper over. I watch the tribunals across the country. Governors, maybe Enugu, look at it. I think somewhere now I'm hearing about Plateau. I'm hearing about KB, where there are serious issues around certification. Now think around democracy and development. People talk about China. They say China is not a democracy. But what is clear is China has regularity. The rules are followed. Investors have confidence that there's legitimacy of succession, who succeeds who. The process is followed through, nobody truncates it. And each time in the history of China, whether the Gang of Four or whether with Chairman Mao, where there is a departure from those conventional understanding about society, you see disruption and stagnation. So I think that we shouldn't lose sight that as long as electoral justice is compromised, and it's namely that first, people who are constitutionally qualified to run election. I'm so really worried about the spate of fraudulent certificate questions. I mean, last night we heard about DSS countermanding youth service NYC in any case. If there is no certainty as to simple thing about qualification to stand election, certificate, if we are now in a republic of forgery, and the courts play dead brain to this, then you have compromised electoral justice, not just, you have compromised economic development, because essentially, the heart of, the nerve of economic development is not just about copying laws, about Bankruptcy Act, or copying laws that liberalize. No, the underwritten code is that everybody understands that the rules are clear, the rules bind, the rules cannot be truncated, the rules are not captive to any big ego. If people